What's up, guys? This is Bulldog the Fell-Handed, and today we have Bull's Super Mutant Weak Spot Guide, also known as the M6A2E1 Tier 8 American Heavy Tank, for those who do not know. Now, this tank is a monster to penetrate if you do not know the proper areas, and that is what we're going to go over today, exactly where to take this beast down. As always, we're going to start with frontal weak spots because more than likely these vehicles will be pointing towards you. The first run we're going to do is AP. The second run is going to be APCR, and this is from a Type 59 with 181 penetration with AP and 241 penetration with APCR. Now let's get right into it. Directly under the track skirts and above the tracks, a very easy weak spot. Does not take a lot of penetration to get through there. Obviously I'm doing it with 181 penetration right now. It's a little difficult to hit. It's not super easy to hit. Of course, I am in the Type 59, the Chinese / Russian medium tank. Accuracy, not so much. So just be aware of that this is a possibility. However, there are considerable more weak spots on the turret, which we will get to shortly. Now, I'm just trying this. I'm going to continue to shoot the same area just to kind of see what kind of results I get. And if you have watched my weak spot guide to the E3, it's kind of like the inside headlight on the hull of the E3. It doesn't really happen a whole lot for you. Now, there is a band going down the left side of the turret, the right side if you're a Super Mutant operator, that is quite easy to pin. Normally you're going to have a 70 to 75% chance to penetrate this with, 181 penetration. Now, keep in mind, 181 penetration is actually kind of low. Granted, it's not as low as, say, for example, the Super Pershing, but it is pretty daggone low. Now we're going to go ahead and start with some APCR. This entire round is going to be nothing but APCR, and essentially we're just going to fire at every single thing and more or less see what the results are. Now, you're going to notice that a lot of the tank opens up to you. However, the turret and the turret area still have bands of strength. If you watch my weak spot guide on the IS-7, and I explained that the side of the tank has just different bands of strength, so if you're going to shoot it in the side, make sure to shoot it in the very back. The same way with high penetration rounds such as the APCR and the Type 59. You're not going to get a lot of your traditional weak spots because this thing is just armored very, very funky. However, you can definitely touch it, but the bottom line is you don't really need to. The commander's hatch on this and the gunner's hatch on the top left of the tank are extremely easy to penetrate with your standard AP round, as well as the left hand side of the tank that I showed you in the AP zone there. So, guys, if you're fighting this thing frontally, make sure to go for those two spots. It's going to be extremely easy. I wouldn't even bother for the hull. The chance of pinning that is just too give or take, I guess, is what I'm saying. You may pin it, you may not, so just be aware of that. It's kind of like hitting the machine gun port on the Super Pershing. Let's say that. So don't go for it if you don't have to, and the commander's hatch and gunner's hatch are just perfect weak spots. Now, let's go to angled weak spots. Now, this tank does not have a great range of angles it can be before it is considered over-angled. Much like your typical American tanks, not a whole lot of side armor. Now, however, the place you need to be very, very cautious about on this tank is when you're shooting at the side. If you see, I can actually see the upper or the bottom area there, the shadow area on the right hand side. I can see up into the tank, and if you fire on that and you manage to connect with it, you will end up doing some damage, and you can hit some very juicy modules in there, as you will soon see. So just be aware of that. Now, your regular weak spots, when something like this has these angled, compound angled armor, on the side, when they turn and they rotate toward you, they cease to become compound angles, and they just become angles, which means they're just angled a certain amount, not, say for example, the pike nose of the IS-7. So you can penetrate them. It is possible. Once you switch to APCR, you'll be going through them, but you know what? The hull of this tank is just nasty. This is a very, very tough tank. Now, as you see, I am shooting straight into the side of the hull on this tank. Very, very easy shot, assuming, of course, you can manage to connect with it. I am using AP. Now, guys, my constant viewers, I'm not going to focus on the turret at this time because we know that the commander's hatch, the gunner's hatch, and the left side of the turret are all easy penetrations for the turret. So I'm not going to focus on the turret. I am just going to focus on the hull. Now, as you see here, I'm hitting the upper part of the side of the hull here. These aren't skirts. This is actually part of the tank. And you know, a lot of tanks you're going to see skirts like that. These are not skirts. Guys, this is part of the tank, and we are connecting with it. Granted, of course, you know, don't go for this. Go for the turret. There's a lot of weak spots there. They just need to be exploited. Now, if you're hitting the side of this thing, it is more or less going to be a fortress. And this is why, you know, with the Super Pershing, so many players get out there and they just don't know what to do when they come up against these things. And everybody's been saying, hey, we need a Super Mutant weak spot guide. Just get it out there. So, you know, don't count on penetrating anything on this tank with AP, because it's not going to happen. It's few and far between. Now we're running APCR, and I'm just going to kind of show you. I'm going to fire at the lower plate, upper plate. I'm going to shoot at some typical areas, and you know, you're going to see not a lot happening actually. And the idea here is that, you know, I like to go through and I like to show you, you know, what the tank is and is not capable of. Now, right here on the side of the tank, you're just going to see nothing but action. And this is the spot. If he is angled towards you, you want to run your premium round, your heat round, your APCR, your HESH, what have you, because it'll go right through there. Now, I'm still an advocate for the turret. If you feel you can shoot this a little bit more. Now, also consider if the Super Mutant operator is angled towards you and he is like this and he's moving back and forth, the flat armor piece that I have 3 rounds in, or there's 3 markers, is going to be moving the least. That's why I always say, when you're fighting a Super Mutant, or excuse me, a Super Pershing, go for the turret ring. And the reason I say that is because if he's doing the Super Pershing shuffle, which is back and forth, the turret ring will be the easiest to hit. So that's kind of the reason. You know, you want whatever's easiest for you. If you're aiming at the turret, or the commander's hatch, or the gunner's hatch, you know, it's possible, but you know, you may miss. So anyway, it's just 6 in one, half dozen the other. Whatever you prefer is essentially what it's going to boil down to. Now, as you can see, if I'm aiming far back on the tank, due to the angle of the tank, even though it's over-angled, I'm still ended up pulling a lot of bounces. So if you go up against someone who has no premium ammunition loaded, yes, there are people like that, or who chooses not to use it, you're just absolutely going to decimate them, because you're going to be more or less a steel wall. So, to my Super Mutant operators, yes, you can still go out there and you can still make things happen. However, you just need to be aware that if they start pinning you, you need to make some changes, you need to move, you need to reposition. That goes for everybody. Okay, guys, over-angled weak spots. Now, there's only a few degrees between angled and over-angled, and it's a very, very small margin. And of course, you're going to notice that a lot on American tanks, because once again, they don't have a whole lot of side armor. But you know, the armor they have to make the most of. Once again, lower and upper plate, you know, invincible, at least in a tier 8 lobby. Against the Type 59, invincible. Even with premium ammunition, nothing's going to happen there. It looks like I'm actually a bit further back from this tank than normal, so I don't really know why I do that. Anywho, so, you know, we're not having a lot of good luck, but once we start going down the side, you're going to notice, you're going to know some changes. You're going to know some easy penetrations, because it's going to start to become apparent that it is in fact overangled. And you know, guys, this isn't some German heavy tank that has, you know, 120 side armor with, you know, 60mm side skirts, whatever the E100 has. It's not that. So you can't park this thing sideways and bounce rounds left and right. You have to be very, very aware that, you know, you are overangled, and you need to kind of more or less straighten the tank up, sort it out. And you know, I know a lot of guys don't angle American tanks at all because of the weakness of the side armor. Normally that's a good thing, but at the same time, I want to show the people who are firing on this tank, as well as the operators, exactly where that margin is. And that margin is just only just a few degrees. I mean, it's not much at all. I mean, you've got, you know, 6-7 degrees difference that you can do. And so, you know, you just have to be very, very aware of that once you get to a certain point, it's a wrap. You're going to start taking rounds. So just as long as you're aware of that and you know the risks, it's perfectly fine. And you know, once again, at this angle, you can pretty much have that side plate that is normally a compound angle once you're facing it. So moving on, let's go ahead and get to the side weak spots. And you know, firing on this thing on the side, you can pretty much have free reign on the side of this tank. You just have to be cautious not to fire too much towards the front. Also, another little tidbit, the gun on this tank is extremely easy to take out. Just be aware of that if you hit this gun from the front, there's a good chance you're going to take it out, or at least damage it. So, you know, we're ended up pulling some bounces here off the front, and I'm specifically trying to fire on areas that will pull a bounce. And the reason being is, you know, most of us know, hey, you know, most people know where to shoot the tank on the side, but I kind of want to show people, you know, what the tank's capable of on the side. In other words, if you aim, you know, dead center in the side of the turret, and your round disperses and hits the mantlet or the front of the armor there, and it bounces, you know, that way you'll know why. You'll say, okay, well, I see maybe my round went here, it did this, it did that, what have you. So it's more or less just for information, scientific reasons. Let's go ahead and say that. Now, the compound angles here on the front of the tank are being extremely effective at this particular angle. And the reason, guys, is those are compound angles, is they are angled, laid back plates, and then they are moved from that position into more angles. It's kind of difficult for me to explain compound angles. You know what? Google it. How about that? So, moving on. We're still pulling some bounces here off the back of the tank. We did kind of manage to sneak one in there on the side. So, a lot of things are happening right now. You know, still ended up pulling a lot of bounces. So, you just have to be aware of where you're firing. You know, I'm a big advocate of, you know, there's a time and a place for an auto lock, and on a heavily armored tank such as this beast, aim it in. I mean, that's, you know, even if you're on the side, aim it in, because he's not going to be sitting here. More than likely, he's going to be moving around, he's going to be moving the gun, he's going to be trying to find out who the heck is shooting him. So just keep that in mind, that you need to aim rounds in on these heavily armored tanks. Okay, so let's go to rear weak spots. And of course, it wouldn't be Bull by the Fell-Handed if I didn't do every single area of this tank, you know, in, out, and beyond. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do rear weak spots, and it doesn't have a whole lot, but, you know, you can pull a bounce if you're not aiming, you know, 100%. So far, you know, we're just kind of going around here. And the funny part is, the band here at the top is, you know, it is extremely tough. As you can see, I am bouncing AP off the back of this turret. So just be aware that the top of the turret is pretty nasty when it comes to armor. There's not a high percentage, you know, to penetrate if you're running 181 penetration on average. Now, you go a little bit lower, it's a little bit different ball game. Your percentage goes up. And, you know, until you get, you know, dead center and then lower, then your percentage is just going to raise and raise and raise until you're going to be going through with little to no difficulty. And, you know, I'd like to think that this turret on this tank is just 100% nasty, whether you're shooting it from the front or shooting it from the back. It's just a nasty piece of work. The bulb there at the bottom, you see how it kind of swoops down. If you're going to hit that, it's you know, it's gonna bounce it pretty much for sure, just because of the angle. I mean, it's just an incredible piece of machinery here, guys. I mean, the turret is just tough, even from the back. Your best bet, if you're shooting the turret, is the little side parts right here. If that's all you can see, of course. If it's not all you can see, go for the bottom of the hull there. Pretty much anywhere is just nothing but money right there. I mean, perfect shots. Okay, guys, let's go to modules. And, you know, we're going to do every single module. Granted, of course, you know, the Super Mutant is pretty much the same. The only thing different versus the left from the right side is the other side, the left-hand side, does not have the radio. Okay, obviously we have to start with a cannon, and then we are going to go to the gunner. The gunner sits right here. You remember me saying the gunner hatch and the commander hatch directly above the reticle is pretty much a guaranteed penetration, in addition to the band on the left. This is your loader. Your loader sits opposite of your gunner. He has no little hatch to look out of like the gunner. And right over here is your commander. He is situated directly behind the gunner. From here, he operates the tank inside the turret. Now, moving on, of course, here at the bottom, you're going to have your turret ring, more or less where all turret rings are. It's a little silly, but I like to put it in here because, you know, I like to be very, very thorough. Now, you've got two sets of optics, here, and that is your gunner and your commander. Now, on the right-hand side, you have a radio. This is absent from the left-hand side of the tank. Just FYI. Now, if you look past that, you're going to have your radio operator, which is in what would be called the assistant driver's seat, or, you know, bow machine gunner seat. Here in the hull, we have an ammo rack right along this strip of armor right here, and right below that, in the track region, you have another larger ammo rack. So the ammo rack in this tank is more or less on the right hand side. You know, anywhere in this area is going to be nothing but racks. So Super Mutant operators, just hide your right side if you know somebody is perhaps trying to flank you. Your engine is right through here, and this is duplicated on the other side. So this area on both sides of the Super Mutant hold the engine, as well as some in the rear. Now, moving on, here is your gunner. He has a seat and his feet are hanging in the hull. And then right behind him is the commander, and he has more or less the exact same thing. He sits slightly above the gunner so that it's you know, his optics are above the gunner's. Think Apache or Cobra helicopter, where, you know, you have the commander of the ship up higher. Sorry, that was the ammo rack. Now, the rear of the tank, you're going to have fuel tank modules on both sides here. A little bit of fuel here, a little bit of fuel on the other side. So just keep that in mind, that, you know, it is possible for someone to put around there and, you know, catch you on fire. Anything's possible, so just be aware of that at all times. It could happen. This entire area is more or less engine. You just need to not keep anyone to the rear of you, and then, you know, you should be fine. Okay, moving up to the turret again, we have an ammo rack right in the back of the turret here, directly behind the loader. And then off to the right, is where the commander is going to set, you know, in the back of the tank there. And guys, that's it. This is the Super Mutant. Thank you for watching. It was an amazing journey. I found out a lot of things about this tank I did not know. And to all my Super Mutant operators, hopefully you can take this information and make it work for you. Guys, thank you for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Check the description box for other channels that you may be interested in. And we'll see you guys next time.